I'm Tom Francis, and this is Next Up to the Mic. On this episode, we're featuring poet and performer Siena, who is one of our spoken word artists who graced the stage live at the Linda on December 17th, 2021. Siena is a spoken word poet and improviser from the Northeast. She writes from her heart and her experience with a desire and a mission to have grown a little by the time she reaches the end of the page. Using poetry as a healing medium, Siena finds peace in putting pain to paper and taking away the shame and stigma of survivorship by speaking her story. Please welcome, next up to the mic, Siena.
Yeah, so this was written about a year ago, not knowing when things were ever going to change or be different. I want to write a poem for the day this will all be a memory, for the day I'll remember trying to survive it and hoping I get to remember because I'm hoping I do survive it. I want a poem that will give me perspective one day when my heart is full but my small problem seems big, and I hope I remember crying into my mask at a freezing train station asking how it all went so wrong. I hope for one days because the prospect of one day keeps me going to find it. One day so I can remember that today was worth surviving it. For every day I think to myself that something's got to give and yet somehow nothing ever does. I think about a day spent happy, and I know one's coming soon. Thanks, y'all. I'm gonna move this because it feels awkwardly lopsided. So, something I did this year was leave human service work after about 7 years-ish. Left high school and started working with folks who had survived a lot of trauma, which is important work to do, but that system is also really screwed up. And then today, sometimes when I think, maybe I'll go back, I get this piece out and remember why I don't anymore. An ode to social workers and service providers wondering how they're going to get up to face tomorrow. I don't know how to explain the Sunday night sick stomach that comes with knowing what's brewing in the weekend when offices are closed and hotlines are attempting to stop the flow of fatality and tragedy, offering strategy and safety plan and shelter beds seemingly never vacant. I know we struggle with that feeling we want to be more than just this job. We are honored to help folks unpack their truth, but sometimes I worry I get so lost in their stories that my own doesn't exist anymore. And of course, it's not supposed to. We preach self-care and talk about trauma, vicarious or otherwise, that predated our selection of this profession and perhaps gives us reason to fight this fight of little pay and major misunderstanding. But when the reality of that trauma skims the surface, there's not time to be taken for yourself. Brenda worked through her flu. Candace has 3 kids that she raises by herself, and you think you get to stay home today. Dragging yourself into the office at 8 o'clock the next day after sitting in your car at 2 that morning, sobbing because you're exhausted, finally arrived home from the second job because the first one doesn't offer the dignity of paying my bills, running victim services like a Fortune 500 corporation never turned out health or healing, but keeps us moving, wondering why we're never enough, why there's never enough help to be had, when we've stretched our rubber band selves so tight we're ready to snap, but don't you dare break under this pressure. Stop clocking out for lunch, memo from HR. We do not want to acknowledge how much of yourselves you leave on the stained carpet at the walk-in clinic where you hear someone else's horror and wonder if the next foot in the door will be the one to try to strike you later or the one whose danger is waiting for them just down the block. We want to keep ourselves safe, not ever assume should consider that own safety, not ever ask what you took home you did not have arms to carry. What is your burnout when one client has a gun to her head, when one client got harassed by the police when he finally called 911, when one client just found out their partner gave them HIV? Coworker says, no one will ask you if you can do it. They will give it to you and wait for a protest, but hope not to ever hear one. We preach consent for a living, can't practice it in our own offices. I just want to be allowed to experience my own healing, but I don't know if I can stay here and do that. I try to talk about leaving, but the guilt trips roll in where the money never did. Won't you miss making a difference? Don't you understand? I'll be making a difference that matters in my own soul, but somehow that still doesn't seem to make anybody's short list. I want to put myself first, but how can I when there will never be no more victims? If I name myself victim, it only pulls me in deeper. How can someone with this experience turn their head to this violence when they know this violence? Don't you know it feels like violence keeps me here? I just want permission to feel better, permission to do better, and permission to like myself. but I have to give that to myself. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, that's a difficult thing to do, is make big transitions, and especially when so much of our lives is tied to our profession. I think a lot of us feel that regardless of what we do for a living. Ooh. So in this unpacking of toxic things or places, I've started to unpack the habit I have of apologizing a lot for stuff that I do that is not necessarily worthy of an apology. So I say sorry like 150 trillion times every single day for stuff that I don't even remember that I did. And we're unpacking that this year. So we're going to unpack it together. I have a really great boss. She's smart and funny and kind and fast, and every time I say sorry for something I don't need to be sorry for, she tells me to stop. I know she means it to make me feel better, but sometimes I want to tell her it's not so much that I'm sorry, it's just that I'm asking permission to still be here. I love my job, and I'm scared someone will make me leave like they have before, so every sorry she tells me not to say means another day of safety. I have an amazing support system. My friends are sweet, lovely people. But I'm disabled, and every time I apologize for my louder symptoms, people I love tell me not to say sorry. And I know they want me to feel accepted, but sometimes I want to tell them it's not that I'm sorry I'm disabled, it's just that I'm afraid one day I'll be more burdened than I'm worth, because sometimes I feel like too much of a burden for even myself, and I'm worried you'll see that, and every time you tell me not to be sorry, I gain another 24 hours of safety. When I text my partner and say sorry for any of the 1,000 things I apologize for, they tell me I don't need to be sorry, and sometimes I want to tell them. It's not that I'm sorry for loving you. I'm just gutted every time I think they must have gotten angry and decided they don't love me anymore. Just like partners have before, and every time they say I don't need to be sorry, I breathe a sigh of relief that they haven't left and decided never to look back. I think about every sorry I've said over the years, big and small, and there's enough to fill so many books. Titles for every infraction that actually wasn't one, and chapters that remind me I still get to be here. For every apology you heard, I received a permission slip, and for that I am not sorry. I apologize for texting too often or not enough, saying sorry for how tipsy I got at the bar on Saturday, sorry I didn't pick up my section fast enough, sorry it took me too long to get control over my body, sorry I'm still saying sorry I'm still talking, sorry I said anything, sorry I'm still fat, sorry I'm here, sorry for not remembering, sorry I made that mistake again, sorry I'm still taking up space in your life, every sorry that I keep saying I think about, every superfluous apology I type and never send because I'm scared I've said sorry too much and I'll only feel the need to apologize for that too, but when you tell me not to be sorry, I get to hear that you're still here and that you're not sorry I exist. So this next one's a little interesting, and I'm going to ask for a little bit of grace, in particular from the men in the room. Take that how you will. You'll get it in a minute. The fun part of this is that a lot of people who are like the subjects in this poem who contributed to me angrily writing this piece in my car after an irritating interaction post-poetry slam have like resolved the things that I'm yelling about. So that's pretty cool. I'm not necessarily going to tell you which ones because that we'd be here all night and that's boring and you don't know them. So it doesn't really matter. But just that's why I'm reading it now, and also because yelling is cathartic. And we're all going to take part in that catharsis together. Cool. When the guy I was fucking told me about the girl who didn't love him back, I said, maybe the universe is just pushing you towards someone you're better matched with, and I didn't mean myself. But in case I had any doubts, when I told him about the guy who put butterflies in my stomach but who didn't like me back, he said, yeah, he never looked twice at a big girl anyways. Treated his loving of thick girls like a martyrdom, like thick thighs were a charity and his mediocre dick the sole benefactor. Used my size as a permanent reservation in my body when he wouldn't have paid for the hour back when I was working. I think about telling him that the ex I ignored long enough offered me my former going rate for an in-public date just to get me to talk to him. And when I started writing this poem, I never meant for it to be my horror stories, but a dialogue on how shitty men are, but isn't that the same thing? And it's the conversations I have with femmes at the improv theater who are so funny they'll burst your sides, but say they won't try stand-up because it feels like a Shark Tank and they weren't talking about the crowds. It's the guy at the poetry slam who scored all tens talking about his mother's domestic violence, and the woman gets up with a piece on leaving the man who beat her and sees the boards read 6 or 7. It's when my restaurant manager ran through the kitchen screaming, "I'm sick of men," after one more drunk customer gropes a waitress and in the same instant complains about the included gratuity she asked. Why do they keep touching you? When I told my male friend to get home safely when we parted ways at the bar, he said, "No one's trying to kidnap me," and I said, "It's funny, I never knew car accidents cared about your gender." You see, he never questioned why the girl didn't love him, took her disinterest as an insult and responded to indifference with anger, but somehow when it came to me, there were explanations settled in his throat, just waiting for an invitation to be shared about why someone might not love me. It's funny, I thought myself cliche for even writing this poem and agonized about whether or not to share it now, but I can kind of name 10 cis male comics who have the exact same Bill Cosby joke that isn't even fucking funny, and not a single one asked themselves if they should keep telling that they just do. They jumped into their scene and never worried about who might be circling the bar, wondering if a few well-placed compliments about the routine and some drinks afterward would make it easier to sneak into their bed, are all sharp-teeth, bloodthirsty, and never even asking if there might be a bigger predator alive. I'm sure he'd not call himself dangerous, but to the little fish, the shark probably looks like it's smiling at first. He had never considered how the world holds him on a pedestal, never imagined the Grim Reaper wouldn't care how you identify. When he comes for your existence, it won't matter who made more per hour than who at the same job when they put the both of us in the ground. Don't you know how much it matters that you never thought dying to be a side effect of your life just by knowing yourself a man? Why should you never distress over the death you threaten just by being alive? How exciting it must be to live with no fear. Thanks, everybody. I've got 2 more, and they don't go with anything I've read so far. So that's fun. This piece is really sappy and more sincere than I am used to being. So rock with me for a minute. And then it's gonna be sad a little bit, and then it's gonna be a little bit happier. Cool. A vibe. Look, I appreciate, this is an informed consent. It's not necessarily a content warning, it's just a content announcement. Cool. Yes, I like that. Thank you, Tom. Emotional tour guides. A friend shared with me once that BuzzFeed told her via the results of a quiz that the amount of pillows she sleeps with is an indication of her crippling loneliness. I didn't ask her how many pillows because I'm scared it will be a smaller number than mine. I started out with 2, one for me and one for my boyfriend, accumulated to 3 when I moved 900 miles away 2 days after the entire world shut down, and 3 became 5 when he broke up with me 2 weeks later. 5 became 6 when I moved back with nothing to come home to but a hope that things might get a little better in a city where I at least knew someone besides myself. 6 turned back to 4 when life started to look more normal again and I could hug people I loved. 4 turned into just your arms when I first stayed the night next to you. I'm scared to think of the number I will escalate to when you leave me for the final time. Buried in a sea of down and fleece where I used to hear your heart beating next to mine just always a little faster. Be it an ocean or an interstate away, I'll miss you even though the tearful goodbyes do not belong to me. I will add to my collection of softness to try to fill the brokenness I already feel each time I remember. Say an incantation to ensure a safe return to friendlier seas, and think of every stretch you drew into my face when I miss you so much my soul feels empty. Cast a spell for your protection. Ask a God I'm not terribly acquainted with for your life protected and spared. Ask and never know if my prayer has been answered because I never belonged to you or you to me, but I'm thankful for your breath anyways. I'll buy 2 or 20 or 100 more pillows, and each one will remind me how thankful I am we got to know each other in this life. And I am thankful, a little bit broken, and so thankful. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, see, it's a bait and switch there. That's what happens. Because you think it's funny, but it's super not funny. So this is the last piece I have. It was written on December 4th, 2020. Not knowing if we'd ever see people that, were outside of our little pods, anytime soon. And what that kind of feels like and what that energy is, so. Written for each thing that I miss. For Connor and I, and a night of bar hopping mid-July where we danced and drank tequila sunrises with toasted marshmallow skin, gold and sweet and warm to the touch. sharing kisses and secrets and stories on pub stools and dark streets when the outdoors never cooled off. For poetry the way it was when I was first learning it, the buzz in a room mid-open mic when you can hear a chorus of and snapped fingers alongside someone's honesty, humor, tragedy, or joy. I can almost taste the pre-slammed circle of thick smoke, clasped hands, and spoken urgent prayers. A rattling Amtrak train on the way to someone I miss very much and a folk music concert. Starting a night not knowing where it would end and purple twinkle lights hung above a stage. Written like a spell when I think of a long-anticipated first kiss on a rainy sidewalk outside a theater after rehearsal. Each of these memories is a destination I wish I could visit in the present for all the casual, spontaneous, joyful decisions to get on a plane or set up camp beside the ocean. For each time, I didn't know it would be the last time for a long time. When did I last hold your hand? When did we part ways at last call without knowing it was the last call for so much more? The longer we spend suspended, the more memories start to feel like dreams of many sleeps ago, fading like an aging photograph, and I can't seem to make that stop. You get it? Because it's better now. Cool. All right. Yeah, all right. All right, so I got you. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Thank you, Tom, for putting this invitation out. It's super exciting and lovely to be here and be saying poetry out loud with other people in the same living room. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Next Up to the Mic. We couldn't do it without our generous community. If you would like to support this and other Hudson Valley Writers Guild projects, please go to hvwg.org to donate and to become a member. And if you're a business and want to sponsor this podcast, send an email to info@hvwg.org. To find out more about this great literary and arts community that we have here in upstate New York, go to hvwg.org and be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at HV Writers Guild.